Hello Internet, hello world. Today we're going to talk about the legislature. We're going to talk specifically about how we make laws in the UK. And there's a lot of links in here. There's a lot of detail that you're going to want to ask questions about. So make sure that you've got your notes handy. Make sure also that you can access the copy of this document that is stashed on StoneNet so you can follow the links to the videos and the various interactive pages that are scattered throughout this particular presentation. A bit of a departure. Thought I'd try a bit of this. This is Spoon, a band to which I am entirely indebted to those very, very clever people at Crack. They introduced it, and this is called Inside Out, which seemed kind of appropriate in the context of talking about the UK legislation. Anyway, maybe we'll get back to that some other time. Anyway, let's have a look at the legislation in the UK. And we'll start off by looking at some key terms. One key term, primary legislation, statute laws. This is what Parliament churns out. You'll remember that we look at the supremacy, the legal supremacy of acts of Parliament, which itself generates parliamentary supremacy and sovereignty. And yeah, this is it, because Parliament's primary legislation is the highest form of law in the land. This is what Parliament does, and this is why they are, well, by and large, in charge. Now, secondary legislation, you'll see there we've got our first link. That will take you to one of my Storyfies. Secondary legislation is complicated. It comes from government. Government makes it, government drafts it, and it's presented in bulk to Parliament, and they go, yeah, that's fine. It's not really law. It has the full status of law, but it's not actually law because, of course, only Parliament can make law. Rather, secondary legislation, be they statutory instruments or delegated legislation, what that means is that this is the government explaining how it's going to apply law. Now, this probably seems a bit obscure, and in fairness to you, it is. The primary issue here is that an awful lot of the stuff that we look at here, or an awful lot of laws, the general regulations that affect us, are actually passed by statutory instruments. And if you look at if we look at the trend here, there's a clear trend. We can see here that the number of laws passed, with the exception here of Blair, the number of laws passed is generally declining, but the number of statutory instruments passed is increasing dramatically. That's because it's very, very easy for the government to pass these, and it's very, very difficult for Parliament to check them effectively. And really, that's about as much as you need to know. Government writes them, Parliament bulk passes them, basically, and so it's very, very difficult for them to exercise any meaningful scrutiny over that. However, we'll check that as we go through. Let's push on and let's look at the legislative process itself, or rather, let's look at should passing laws be easy or difficult? Now, I'm not going to answer that right now. That's something we're going to discuss in class, but keep that in the back of your mind. Should passing legislation be a straightforward exercise or a hard exercise? If the government wants a law, should Parliament pass that law for it, or is it incumbent upon the government to demonstrate to Parliament why it needs that law and why Parliament should pass that law? Or should Parliament just roll over and let government tickle its tummy while the law marches through without anyone really looking at it? Now, I said that we're going to look at the legislative process. I lied. You are going to look at the legislative process because this particular presentation, this video here, makes it very, very straightforward. And I'm not going to bother trying to reinvent the wheel. If they've done a good job, they can look at it. This is from the Parliament's website, so they probably know what they're doing. So I strongly suggest you find this and you look at it now. I'm not going to get any easier on you because we need now to go to the Parliament website again, and you will find this page, which describes in, again, extraordinarily clear and precise detail the stages of the law. Now, when it comes to passing laws, you don't really need to know these stages in any tremendous detail. It's not a pub quiz. They're not going to ask you what happens after the second reading. What they need you to be able to explain is that this is a complicated process, and it's a complicated process for a reason. I suppose we should really talk about that. It's complicated for a number of reasons. First of all, it needs to be long and complicated so that every view gets heard, even the most nutty views. The most nutty views sometimes are the right ones, but it's important that views are heard. It's important that people have an opportunity to say what they think about this law, be they members of the public, be they MPs. We need a proper stress test on this legislation so that we make sure that only the good ones are passed. I mean, this is the real point. We've got a huge number of stages there. Why is that? It's not out of spite. It's really to make sure that we catch the technical errors as we go through. And when you go back and look again at those stages, you'll see that there should be plenty of opportunities for people to identify where the problems are. And as a result of that, only the most appropriate, only the best fitting legislation should pass. Now, manifestly, that is not the case, and we've had lots and lots of bad laws passing. We need to think about why that might be. Why is it that these bad laws can pass? And that's a conversation we're going to have when we look at why Parliament actually isn't very good at its job, or rather, the reasons why Parliament isn't very good at its job. But in the main, in the round, they can be broken down as follows. There's a compliant majority. Government bills, as a result, are likely to escape the most rigorous analysis. Government has both a majority in the House of Commons and in House of Commons committees, as you'll remember from your work on public bill committees. There's also the opportunity for a parliamentary bypass, and that is the way in which the government might shortcut or circumvent the full process. And here we're looking primarily at statutory instruments. Again, I'm going through this because I've got only 15 minutes in this particular presentation. We're going to spend a lot of time discussing this in class and hopefully getting some proper examples down so you can actually talk with some authority about these. And also the issue of the institutional imbalance, that the government can discount objections from the House of Lords primarily by the use of the Parliament Act. The House of Commons has passed this. They're democratic. They were elected by the people. What are you going to do? We put you there. It's kind of ironic. If you put them there, then presumably you respect their opinions. So why are you then going to turn around and overrule them with the Parliament Act? Let's talk a little bit about the Parliament Act. Again, there's a hot link there. Find it, get the electronic copy of this, and chase it up. But in the round, what it says is that the House of Commons can only block bills passed by the House of Commons twice in the same parliamentary term. So let's assume the House of Commons passes a bill. It goes to the House of Lords. They reject it. It goes back to the House of Commons. They pass it again. Say, well, no, we're absolutely sure. It goes to the House of Lords, and the House of Lords say, no, we're absolutely sure this is rubbish. So it goes back to the House of Commons. The House of Commons scratch their head, scratch their chin, have another look at it and say, no, we really want the bill in this way. And then it goes to the House of Lords. And then if the government wishes, they can play their joker. They can play the Parliament Act card, and the House of Lords goes, well, don't say we didn't warn you. And it goes on to the royal assent and obviously then becomes law. So the government is not obliged to implement the Act, but they may do so if they think it is the right thing to do. Now, the important thing here is that it establishes the primacy of the democratic chamber, and rightly so. The only thing is that the government appointed, be that the current government or past governments, appointed the House of Lords presumably on merit, so there should be some value to their objections. And generally, the Parliament Act is not something that people chuck around lightly. It does limit the power of the Lords, but if the government is deploying it, then it better have a very good reason for doing so. It does make the government more powerful, but the Commons has to do as it's told. Maybe sometimes when the House of Lords blocks something twice, goes back to the House of Commons. The House of Commons looks at it and says to the government, "Are you sure this is the right thing to do?" Again, we'll look at examples of that. The Parliament Act in the 1949 term has only been used 4 times. Since its passing, and only once by the Conservative government. So that's worth knowing about. Generally speaking, I would say that that is a good thing, that is a good thing, that is a good thing. This is a very, very bad thing. Again, we'll discuss the reasons why I think that's the case. I don't think I really need to explain why these 3 are good things. We'll probably focus on why I think this is a very, very bad thing. And that tells us an awful lot about Labour in the early years of 2000s, and even more about Blair, because actually Blair didn't want to do this. And unusually, he actually got that one entirely right. Now, important laws to note, there are lots, okay? Actually, there are lots. But in terms of stuff you need to know for the exam, you don't need to know that many. And the good news for you is that they are all cached here. And next to it is the important laws test. Maybe it'd be a good idea for me to take that off before I set it. I'll give that some thought. Anyway, there's a document there, important laws. The more of these you know, the more happy you are, the more conversant you are chucking these things around, the easier it's going to be. Some more resources for you. There's a Storify there from me on statutory instruments. I've already mentioned that. And it's there. You can go and have a look at that. I strongly advise that you do. And that's it. Really, I think it's fun actually. I do enjoy talking about the legislature almost as much as I really like this track. Anyway, that's it from me. I look forward to seeing you in class. You're going to have lots of questions. There's lots of stuff to follow up there. And once you've got this process nailed down, we can start looking at the good and the bad. And that's where the fun really starts. See you there. Bye now.